Hey, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about something you think you know, carbon dioxide. We almost always hear about it as a problem, right? A greenhouse gas we need to get rid of. But what if I told you that for one of the world's biggest industries, it's also an incredibly powerful, even essential tool?
And that really brings us to the heart of it. Is CO2 a problem that we need to solve, or is it actually a solution that we can use? As you can probably guess, the answer is, well, it's not that simple. It's actually both.
And this really captures that split personality perfectly. On one side of the coin, you've got CO2 as the environmental challenge we all know about. It's a greenhouse gas, a huge liability for companies. But on the other side, it's an industrial resource, a valuable tool that can be a genuine strategic asset. This tension, this paradox, is what we're going to unpack today. So let's dive into that paradox, and we'll start with the side of the story we're all pretty familiar with, CO2 as a massive challenge. Look, in the oil and gas industry, emissions are just a byproduct of the process. But the pressure to manage them, man, it is immense, coming from regulators, from the public, from everywhere. And it's not just one thing, you know? We're talking about a whole stack of pressures. You've got to comply with strict government rules and meet those big global carbon reduction targets. Then there are national sustainability goals, not to mention a company's own sense of corporate responsibility. If you fail on any of these, you're looking at huge fines, maybe even operational shutdowns, and for sure, a big hit to your reputation. The pressure is on from every single angle. Okay, but now for the twist. What if you could take that liability, that CO2, and actually turn it into an asset? Well, this is where things get really fascinating. It's a process called enhanced oil recovery, or EOR, and it's where CO2 becomes an unbelievably powerful industrial tool. So what exactly is EOR? Well, to put it simply, it's a way to get more oil out of the ground. See, after you pump out all the easy-to-get oil with traditional methods, there's still a ton of it trapped deep down in the rock. EOR is the tech you use to go after all that stubborn, hard-to-reach oil. So how in the world does CO2 work its magic way down there? Well, it's not just about pushing the oil out. When you inject CO2, it acts like a solvent. Think of it kind of like adding paint thinner to thick, sticky paint. The CO2 mixes with the crude oil, makes it way less viscous, and helps it flow much more easily through the rock. It also keeps the pressure up in the reservoir, helping to unlock oil that would otherwise be stuck down there forever. All right, so we know it works, but what does this whole process actually look like, step by step? It's a pretty amazing feat of engineering, but the main idea behind it is actually surprisingly simple. Okay, so first you take highly compressed CO2 and inject it deep into an oil reservoir. Down there, under all that pressure, it mixes with the trapped oil. You can almost think of it like how seltzer water can lift a tough stain out of fabric. It makes the oil mobile again. That new CO2 oil mixture gets pushed toward production wells and brought to the surface. And here's the really important part. A whole lot of that CO2 actually stays locked away deep underground. And that's the real kicker. This whole process isn't just about getting more oil. It's also a form of carbon storage. By using CO2 to get the oil out, you're also permanently sequestering a big chunk of that same CO2 in those geological formations. It's a pretty incredible dual benefit that tackles both energy production and carbon management at the same time. So how does all this happen logistically? I mean, getting CO2 from where it's created to where it's needed, that's a massive undertaking. Let's walk through its entire journey, the whole management life cycle, from capture all the way to injection. So step one is all about the capture. Instead of just letting CO2 from, say, a power plant or an industrial facility go up into the atmosphere, special technology is used to trap it right at the source. This is the absolute first critical step in turning a waste product into a valuable resource. All right, once you've got it, you have to move it. But you can't just move raw CO2. First, it's got to be processed. All the water is removed and it's compressed into this dense fluid. Only then is it ready to travel, usually through a big network of specialized pipelines, all the way to the oil field. And that brings us to the final stage, injection. After its long journey, the CO2 is pumped thousands of feet underground. But the job isn't done. Nope. There's continuous monitoring with some really sophisticated tools to track exactly where that CO2 is and to make absolutely sure it stays safely and permanently locked away. Now, it's really important we pause here for a second and talk about safety. Because as useful as CO2 is in this process, it's also dangerous. It's an asphyxiant, which means it displaces oxygen.
So this quote is a crucial reminder that every single step we just talked about, capture, transport, injection, demands incredibly strict safety protocols to protect workers, the public, and the environment. There's no room for error.
So when you put all these pieces together, what does it mean for the big picture? Let's zoom out a bit and ask, how does this kind of CO2 management fit into the huge global shift toward a more sustainable energy future? What we're really seeing is a whole toolkit of strategies. It definitely includes expanding technologies like carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and EOR is a big part of that utilization piece. But it also means doing things like reducing other emissions from flaring, using cleaner day-to-day practices, and just being way more transparent with monitoring and reporting. It's a holistic approach because this is one seriously complex problem. And that leaves us right back where we started, with this one big, thought-provoking question. We began by talking about CO2 as this massive environmental challenge. But as we've seen, technology is actually creating pathways to turn that exact same challenge into a strategic asset. The real question is, can we master this process and scale it up globally? That is one of the defining questions for our energy future. Thanks for tuning in.